A Missouri family is searching for answers after their 16-year-old son was shot in the head after accidentally ringing the doorbell of the wrong house. Now, according to Kansas City police, Ralph Yarl, who's black, was asked by his parents to pick up his siblings at 115th Terrace, but accidentally approached a home on 115th Street instead. Now, after ringing the doorbell, Yarl was immediately shot by a white homeowner in the head. After watching him fall to the ground, the homeowner shot Yarl again. The wounded 16-year-old had to ask for help at 3 different homes before finally receiving assistance. He is currently in serious but stable condition.
The homeowner, who police have not named, was taken into custody and placed on a 24-hour hold and then released by officials. No arrest has been made. Now, people have been objecting to this person's release. Apparently, that is pretty par for the course until charges are formally, felony charges are formally filed. And there have been a number of protests around this, principally because there is this question of whether stand your law ground is implicated here again. Missouri law does not require a person to first retreat before using deadly force if they feel their life is in danger. And in cases like this kind of subjective belief that if you're in your home and someone comes up who is threatening, you have the ability to use deadly force to defend your home. And the argument that many folks have been making is that because of the public perception that black men are dangerous, inherently, you get situations where I'm sure there's going to be an argument that seeing this 16-year-old on this front porch ringing the doorbell was justification in a lot of people's minds for a homeowner to swing first and ask questions later.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that should not be justification. I wonder if the ringing the doorbell is a kind of counter indicator, because what the mailman, the package person, the pizza guy, people ringing the doorbell is in fact about as non-intimidating or threatening thing you can do. You're like announcing your presence, right? Ostensibly having a legitimate. I mean, anyone can. I mean, people can do that. You can ring someone's door, like that is within the scope. That's not considered a violation of someone's property rights. Just generally. So if. We're not to the point, obviously, where we're hearing his argument for why he did this or presenting any kind of legal defense. We're not even to the point where he's been charged, although I agree, based on what we know about this so far. Obviously, we need to gather more information. It sounds like there will be a charge forthcoming. There should be a charge forthcoming. Yeah, I mean, ringing the doorbell should be commonly understood as not, he wasn't. Was he like in the backside or corner of the house, peeking in the windows? That would be different. I'm still not saying he should be. I'm saying if you're trying to present a stand your ground, again, ringing the doorbell doesn't say to me, oh, this was a provocation or a threat, because it's a very standard issue thing for anyone to do when they come up to even a stranger's house.
This is what's tough. Of course, it is also the case that someone can impersonate a delivery person who they can say they're reading the water pressure on your house and come in. Like, you can ring a doorbell and still be doing a crime. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But the question is, where are we legally going to put the onus? Are we going to put the onus on, the homeowner? Are we going to put the, and give them, or are we going to put the onus on the person approaching a house to say, if you don't want to get shot, you basically have to proceed with extreme caution, or else you're liable for, what kind of society do we want to create? And that's what's happening with these kinds of stand your ground laws. And I think choices are being made sometimes about, some people will readily say, yes, the homeowner should have the presumption, the onus should be on the person approaching the house. Your home is your homestead. It's your castle. Shoot first, ask question later is exactly the kind of world that we want to live in. I do think that sometimes that presumption is rooted in a belief that no one is ever going to think that someone like you is causing harm. You have people who have never been in the position where there's been people have reacted negatively to their existence because of what they look like. And, that's difficult for people to internalize. But in a case like this, where not only did he shoot this 16-year-old, but once he was shot, he shot him again. And then the shooter wasn't even the person who got medical assistance. The kid had to ask a number of, I don't even know what kind of state he possibly could have been in, trying to get someone to help him in this environment. I mean, I don't know. I really hope it's not the case that the laws that we're promulgating to keep us safe aren't fracturing our sense of community such that not only are we shooting kids who ring the wrong doorbell, but we're not rushing to get them help and medical assistance when they obviously need it.
Yeah, look, we need to learn much more if there is a possible racial motivation here. I'm seeing there's calls among the protesters for this to be a hate crime charge. Obviously, we need to know more about the views of the state, or why the person who shot the kid believed he should do that, or that was the right thing to do. I don't think the stand your ground law should be applied here because of the ringing of the doorbell. And I take your point. Yes, we don't want to live in a society where you can't knock on a neighbor's door because you are so fear that they might just shoot you. I do think people should have the right to defend themselves and their property from crime when there's genuine evidence a crime is being committed. I don't think you're obligated to just stand back and watch it happen. But there was nothing so far that we know, and of course we have to wait for more information. We could learn different information, but based on what has been reported so far, there is no reason for any reasonable person to think that you just shoot somebody when they ring your doorbell.
Yeah, I mean, these stand the ground laws have also been really interesting because there is, in the case of the Texas Black Lives Matter protester that was shot by someone, they were both gun carriers, and now there's all of this rigmarole about whether Greg Abbott is going to pardon the guy who was convicted. A jury of his peers convicted him in Texas of murdering this Black Lives Matter protester. There had been social media comments along the lines of that he wanted to kill someone. There was a lot of motive. I think that probably affected the outcome in that case. And now the governor is saying, well, no, I want to pardon this person in a kind of moment that feels very reminiscent of the Kyle Rittenhouse situation, and people are very divided along political lines about whether or not it is you have the right to, if someone has a gun, to shoot them because of this perception of risk and vulnerability. But that really does butt up against this question of, and both of the people in that case were white, but butts up into this question of, okay, we have Second Amendment rights and protections for people, but for whom exactly? Is this really about defending one's right to have a gun? Does that also accrue to the Black Lives Matter protester who was legally armed and carrying, or only to the kind of vigilante who said it was out for blood and went out and ended up murdering this human being? It's notable that California has such strict gun laws in part because Ronald Reagan passed them after Black Panthers were protesting armed at the State House. And there's been this long legacy of, okay, we like these rights, but for whom? And who are they designed to protect? And race has been so bound up in that question throughout the history of American gun laws that it is very difficult for some people to accept that people who really are advocating for gun freedoms really mean it. Right.
I take that criticism, of course. The Second Amendment is not just for white people, it's for black people. It's race non-specific. Everyone should be able to celebrate it. I would probably agree with you that there's been an unnecessary reticence to sometimes to defend, by certain people to defend black gun owners against the police. There was that case, I can't remember, maybe you can remember the name of the individual who was shot and killed. He was carrying a gun. He was in his car, and the police shot him in the car.
That was Philando Castile, wasn't it?
Yes, Philando Castile. And that was an appalling, I mean, it was a crime, but a violation of his Second Amendment rights. He had every right to carry a gun.
Yeah. That case was a whole cluster of things. Yeah. It was like a weird poverty case. He was pulled over and over and again for kind of not replacing his lights and things that were wrong with his car. That was part of why he had the interaction with the police in the first instance. He was a cafeteria worker, beloved cafeteria worker at an elementary or high school, I forget which now. He did everything right when the police approached his car, and it didn't matter. There was a child in the back seat who witnessed witnessed his shooting and murder.
I mean, there was Tamir Rice, who was a kid, so he shouldn't have been carrying a gun. But he wasn't carrying a gun. He had a toy gun. He was shot on arrival within seconds by an incompetent police officer who had been dismissed from previous police forces. This one I remember because I reported on it a lot, for incompetence with firearms. And then he was rehired by this different police force that they shot him immediately
within seconds.
So these rights need to be for everyone. In the Kyle Rittenhouse case, we did talk about that a lot on Rising, but it was before you started hosting. I mean, I didn't feel strongly going into it, but after watching a lot of the video footage and hearing what one of the surviving people who he had shot said at the trial, that it did seem that he was, or his belief that he was defending himself, and that in each of the 3 cases where he had fired, he did reasonably fear for his life because someone was, engaging in violence against him, including one of those people testified to that. It seemed to me that acquittal was the right cause of action there. So
yeah, the question remains. I think that people would accept that outcome a lot more if they imagined a world in which a black Kyle Rittenhouse ran into a crowd protesting, let's say Tea Partiers or Trump supporters, ended up shooting multiple people, killing multiple people, and being acquitted. I mean, I know that sometimes those thought experiments are a little cute. I don't want to like overly go down that hypothetical road because it's just a hypothetical.
Yeah, and also he wouldn't. I mean, possibly depending on what city we're talking about, he wouldn't even be prosecuted. There's tons of gun crimes not being prosecuted.
Someone choosing a black teenager.
I guess if it was politically salient enough, but
choosing to enter a crowd of hostile white conservatives. The hostile white conservatives start to grab at his gun, etc., and he shoots and kills multiple of them. It's difficult, whatever you think about what the outcome should be, it's difficult to imagine with certain little facts like that changed the same outcomes being consistent across. And I think that's what people have the biggest issue with in the cases like Kyle Rittenhouse. I don't know, it's tough. We'll continue to follow what happens with this story. We'll have more Rising for you after this.